Hey everybody, I'm Ryan. I'm in the hotel room at the Regional Championship in Portland, and over the past few weeks, we have talked quite a bit about Mono White and Standard. We've looked at a deck tech sideboard guide against the top 10 most popular decks. We've looked at flex slots and different builds with the deck, and we've looked at nuances and weird play patterns of the deck. And so, since I don't have time to make a normal video, I'm going to combine all of those things into one comprehensive deep dive into Mono White Caretaker Control. Enjoy.
So this is Mono White Control in Standard. What this deck is effectively attempting to do is remove their opponent's creatures and then play Enduring Innocence and Caretaker's Talent. So let's look at these cards. Enduring Innocence is a 3-mana 2/1 that says whenever one or more creatures you control with power 2 or less enter, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. And when Enduring Innocence dies, if it was a creature returned to the battlefield under its owner's control, it's an enchantment. Caretaker's Talent does something very, very similar for us. Caretaker's Talent is a 3-mana class where it says whenever one or more tokens you control enter, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. We can level it up to have it you create a token that's a copy of target token you control, and its level 3 is creature tokens you control get +2/+2. So obviously, if we create a bunch of tokens when we have Enduring Innocence and Caretaker's Talent on the battlefield, then we end up drawing a bunch of cards. This is Miles, by the way. Hi, Miles. We end up drawing a bunch of cards, and it's really good for control decks to draw a bunch of cards. So we're going to be using Caretaker's Talent and Enduring Innocence to get that card advantage that control decks need. So how do we make those tokens? Well, we make those tokens with cards like Carrot Cake. Carrot Cake says when it enters, and when you sacrifice it, create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token and scry one. This 1/1 white rabbit creature token allows us to not only draw cards off of Enduring Innocence and Caretaker's Talent, but it's a threat in and of itself. Archangel Elspeth is a 4-mana planeswalker. Its +1 is create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. Boom. That triggers our draw. Its -2 is put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. It becomes an angel in addition to its other types and gains flying. And its -6 is return all non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. All very good in this token deck. We are playing Overlord of the Mistmoors. Overlord of the Mistmoors is a 7-mana 6/6 that says when it enters and attacks, create 2 2/1 white insect creature tokens with flying, and we can impend it for 4 mana. These insects trigger Caretaker's Talent and Enduring Innocence, and it's a very, very scary threat in and of itself. Beza is yet another threat. Beza has a lot of text on it, but effectively Beza says it's a 4-mana legendary creature. When it enters, create a treasure token if opponent has more lands than you. Gain 4 life if an opponent has more life than you. Create 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens if an opponent controls more creatures than you. And draw a card if an opponent has more cards in hand than you. So this is very good. It allows us to, by itself, get us a card advantage, but also creates tokens and creatures to trigger Caretaker's Talent and Enduring Innocence. On top of all of that, we're playing some Demolition Fields to deal with problematic lands, and then we're also playing Fountain Port. Fountain Port creates tokens. It creates you can tap it to add a colorless mana. We can pay 2 mana and tap it to create a token or sacrifice a token and draw a card. We have a bunch of tokens anyway, so that's awesome. We can pay 3 mana and tap it to pay a life and create a blue fish creature token. That blue fish triggers Enduring Innocence and Caretaker's Talent. And we can pay 4 mana and tap it to create a treasure token. Again, it's a token, so it triggers Caretaker's Talent. So this land can have us kind of draw cards on a stick alongside Enduring Innocence and Caretaker's Talent as well. So those are our threats and card advantage engine. And then this is supported by 2 split up, saying destroy all tap creatures, destroy all untapped creatures. Very often this is just a one-sided board wipe. 4 Laydown Arms. Laydown Arms says exile target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of planes you control. Its controller gains 3 life. We're running a ton of planes, so very often this is just a 1 mana remove a creature, and we don't care about our opponent gaining life because we're a control deck. When we win, it's by a lot. We're playing 4 Get Lost. Destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. Its controller creates 2 map tokens, which is pretty unconditional removal. We don't really care if our opponent deals with, has those tokens. And they're playing 4 Sunfall, an incredibly good board wipe, 5 mana, exile all creatures, incubate X for X the number of creatures exiled this way. The incubate is a token, so it triggers Caretaker's Talent, which is hilarious. So again, we're a control deck that is drawing a bunch of cards with these token synergies. As far as the sideboard goes, we're playing Authority of the Consuls for aggressive decks. Elsa Smite, again, for aggressive decks as well. Also very good against the Enduring cards. We're playing Exercise as Enchantment Hate. Again, also very good against Enduring cards. Rest in Peace or Graveyard Hate. Split Up, mostly for aggressive decks, but the one-sided board wipe is solid, and the Stone Brain for decks that rely on specific and certain cards. So this is the Mono White Caretaker deck, Mono White Token Control, whatever you would like to call it. As far as the sideboard goes, Authority of the Consuls for these aggressive red decks. Also Smite, also for aggressive red decks, but very good against enduring cards because it exiles. Exercise, Enchantment Hate, again, also very good against the enduring cards. Rest in Peace as our graveyard hate. Split Up as a one-sided board wipe. And Stone Brain against decks that rely on very specific cards that happen to be good against us. So, the most popular deck is Dimir Midrange. Against Dimir Midrange, I'm a fan of Elspeth's Smite. Being able to deal with our creatures and make sure they never hit us is a very important aspect of the deck. Also a fan of Split Up. Also, I like Exercise, mostly because the way they win is drawing more cards than us, and Exercise deals with Enduring Curiosity. We're going to be cutting Archangel Elspeth because it doesn't really do anything. We're going to be cutting Beza just because it doesn't really create anything that can block properly, so I'm not a giant fan of that. Then we're going to shave on Sunfall. They can bring in negates, and it becomes very scary to just tap out for 5 mana. And we're going to rely a little bit heavier on Split Up, and so this high sideboard against Dimir Midrange. The second most popular deck is Esper Self Bounce. Against this deck, we are bringing in Split Up to be able to deal with our creatures. I'm a fan of Stone Brain because if we're able to take this town ain't big enough from our opponent's deck, it ends up being very powerful.
Ribbon for me.
What did you want?
Ribbon for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Baby, it made I'm dance. Me.
You want to go to Grammy Dawn's?
Yep.
You do?
I born.
You like Grammy Dawn?
Yep.
Okay. Can we talk about this after I'm done talking about Mono White?
Yep.
Okay. Other than that, we just kind of have to play the deck the way it's sort of meant to be played. I'm not a fan of Sunfall because like they can tempo us out so well, and they sideboard into counter magic. And other than that, like I think this deck is just like powerful on its own. So this is how we're gonna sideboard against Esper. The third most popular deck is Golgari Midrange. Against Golgari, I like just running it back. I think the deck's great against the Golgari deck. I just want to play this 75. The fourth most popular deck is the Gruul Aggro deck. But also the fifth most popular deck is Gruul Prowess, and the eighth most popular deck is Mono Red. We're going to sideboard the same against all of those. We're going to bring in the Authority of the Consuls. We're going to bring in Elspeth's Smite and the Split Up. We're going to be sideboarding out of basically everything that takes some work. I'm not a fan of Caretaker's Talent because it doesn't do anything the turn we play it. We want everything to sort of stop the aggro. And then we're going to shave on Sunfall just because it's 5 mana. That's a lot of mana. We're bringing a Split Up anyway. But this is how I sideboard against both Gruul Aggro, Gruul Prowess, and Mono Red Prowess. That brings us to the sixth most popular deck, Azorius Tempo. Against the Azorius Tempo deck, we are bringing in Rest in Peace, so they're unable to reanimate their creatures, but also it like makes Hottigen really, really small and all that stuff. I'm also a fan of Split Up, because if we wipe their board, it's very powerful. We also, though, have to be really aware that they run counter magic, so we have to be really aware of like casting things that cost 1 million mana. That being said, I'm not a fan of Beza. It doesn't block anything that's relevant. This is this high sideboard against Azorius Oculus, or Azorius Tempo, or whatever you want to call it. The seventh most popular deck is the Jeskai Convoke deck. Against Jeskai Convoke, I'm a big fan of Split Up. I also like Elspeth's Smite. Being able to snipe some stuff that attacks feels really good. We're going to be shaving on Archangel Elspeth, and then shaving down on Caretaker's Talent, because, again, similar to the aggressive decks, like Jeskai Convoke can be very explosive, and that is very scary. So it's high sideboard against Jeskai Convoke. We've already talked about the 8th most popular deck, which is Mono Red Prowess. The 9th most popular deck is Domain. Against Domain, we are bringing in the Stone Brain. Being able to hit most things is relevant, specifically like Up the Beanstalk or White Overlord are powerful things to hit. Also, Exercise is excellent against Domain. We're going to be bringing out Split Up, and then we're going to be shaving on Sunfall. We really just got to outcard them. That's the name of the game. So this is how I sideboard against Domain. And the 10th most popular deck is the Mirror Match, is Mono White Token Control. In the Mirror, we're bringing in Exercise. There's a bunch of enchantments that are great to deal with. And then we were bringing in the Stone Brain. Being able to hit Enduring Innocence or Caretaker's Talent is both like very powerful. And you're like taking out Split Up. I like shaving on a Sunfall because we don't want to have too many of those gumming up our deck. And then we're going to shave on Laydown Arms as well. So that's how I sideboard in the Mirror Match. So these are the non-flex slots in Mono White. If you are playing Mono White Caretaker Control, this is pretty much what you are bought into playing. These 56 cards in the main deck and these 8 cards in the sideboard. So what cards do you play in these slots? Well, I'm happy you asked. These are the cards that you can play in those slots in the deck. So you're going to pick 4 of these cards to add to the main deck. And you're going to be picking 7 of these 15 cards to add to the sideboard. So let's talk about these cards. So you notice some of these are lands. This deck is missing 1 to 2 lands depending on how many lands you want to play. And these are your options to be playing in those 1 to 2 slots. You'd be playing another Demolition Field. Demolition Field, very good against like other fountain ports or manlands or things like that. Can also often be really cute if people are being really aggressive with not playing a lot of basics, because you have plenty of basics and you can just, sometimes it's just a wasteland for 2 mana. You could be playing, whoops. You could, sorry. You could be playing another Plains. If you're just worried about your colors, I've seen people have to mulligan because they have too many colorless lands. So being able to play that white mana that comes in untapped is really good. Or you can play up to 2 Sunken Citadel in these spots. Enters tap, you choose a color. You always choose white. You can add 1 mana of the chosen color or add 2 mana of the chosen color to spend it to activate abilities of land sources. This is very good because you're playing 4 Fountain Port, and Fountain Port is really important for the mid to late game of this strategy, and having to devote less lands to activating Fountain Port multiple times is pretty strong. So you're going to select 1 to 2 of these lands, and then you're going to be selecting 2 to 3 of these other cards because you need 4 slots total. You can be playing a single Elspeth Smite, 1 mana instant, dealing 3 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Very good against aggressive decks and the enduring creatures mostly. You could be playing Archangel Elspeth as a 4 mana Planeswalker, where its +1 is create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. Its -2 is put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. It becomes an angel in addition to its other types and gains flying. Its 9/6 is return all non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it starts at 4 loyalty. This is really strong because it can kind of end the game. It can create tokens kind of on a stick if you already have the enablers, so it can just kind of draw a bunch of cards, because we don't really have anything in our deck like that besides Fountain Port, which we need to devote a bunch of mana to. We could be playing the 4th Beza. Beza being a 4 mana 4/5. When it enters, create a treasure token. If an opponent controls more lands than you, you gain 4 life. Opponent has more life than you. Create 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens. Opponent has more creatures than you, and draw a card if an opponent has more cards in hand than you. This is mostly really good against the aggressive decks, which is a good matchup anyway, but also is decent if we're falling behind in mirror matches or against other very, very slow decks. So I like this card against both ends of that spectrum. And then we could be playing the 4th Overlord of the Mistmoors, which I think is our best threat. It's a 7 mana 6/6. When it enters or attacks, create 2 2/1 white insect creature tokens with flying, and we can impend it for 4. It's a body that creates more evasive creatures that trigger the enablers and Enduring Innocence and Caretaker's Talent, and it can just be an insane late game threat. So you're going to be selecting 1 to 2 of these lands, and then 2 to 3 of these other cards, depending on how many lands you select, to add to your main deck. Now, as far as the sideboard goes, we have 7 flex slots to choose from. We could be playing more Authority of the Consuls. Authority of the Consuls is a 1 mana enchantment. Creatures your opponent control enter tapped, and whenever a creature an opponent controls enters, you gain 1 life. This is good against the aggressive decks because it turns off haste and allows you to have that incremental life gain you don't have to invest in. You'd be playing an additional Elspeth Smite, which we've already talked about. Again, very good against the aggressive decks. You'd be playing up to 2 Destroy Evil, very good against enchantments, and deals with these, creatures that are important to deal with, like Zur or Shieldred or things like that. We're playing up to 3 Dust Animus, is 2 mana 3/2 with flying, and if you have 5 or more untapped lands, Dust Animus enters with 2 +1/+1 counters and a lifelink counter on it. So very good against aggressive decks, mostly. Mostly plotted on 2, and then on turn 3, it's a 4/5 with flying and lifelink, which is kind of ridiculous. We can play 2 Exercise in these slots. It's kind of comparable to Destroy Evil. However, it also hits enchantments, and it cares about power instead of toughness, and it exiles, which is really good against the enduring cards in Standard. We can play an additional Rest in Peace for additional graveyard hate. We can play more Split Up, just as more board wipes for these decks that might flood the board with creatures, whether it be aggressive decks or not. You can play a single Sarah Paragon, really good late game card. It's a 4 mana 3/4 with flying, and once during each of your turns, you may play a land from your graveyard or cast a permanent spell of mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. If you do, it gains when this permanent is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, exile it, and you gain 4 life. So what's really cool about this deck is that things like Carrot Cake, or if they deal with our Caretaker's Talent or whatever, we can just cast from our graveyard when we have Sarah Paragon. Now, you need to invest a pretty insane amount of mana in order to do this, but it's a really good card to play against decks that we're going to have like a deep late game against, like the Mirror Match or Domain or something. And they're playing 2, the Stone Brain, which is an extraction effect. That's good against decks that rely on very specific cards or have cards that are specifically good against us. So you're going to be selecting 7 of these 15 cards to add to your sideboard, and then you have your very own but stock Mono White Caretaker Control deck. First off, it's important to understand the engine of the deck. This isn't a 1-for-1 control deck and then there's one big payoff that lets you catch up on cards or whatever. You're trying to outcard your opponent. That is the name of the game of this deck. And the way you do that is by playing Caretaker's Talent and or Enduring Innocence, and then making tokens with things like Carecake, Fountain Port, and Beza, and then use those enter the battlefield effects to draw cards. And then you use the insane amount of cards that you draw to just pull way ahead in the game. You need to do that in your games or you will lose your games. That is really important to understand, and you need to keep hands that do this. However, this brings me to my next nuance, is that if you level up Caretaker's Talent all the way and give tokens +2/+2, those tokens will no longer trigger Enduring Innocence because they will be too big to trigger Enduring Innocence. I actually saw this recently at Narcy and it was a little devastating for the person. Next up, Sunfall does technically make a token. However, it does not enter as a creature, so it does trigger Caretaker's Talent, but does not trigger Enduring Innocence. And then if you sideboard in Rest in Peace and you have Rest in Peace, make sure your Enduring Innocence doesn't die because it will not come back because the Enduring cards touch the graveyard and will get exiled when it hits the graveyard if Rest in Peace is on the battlefield.
If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.